Hello and welcome to Data Umbrella's webinar. I'm going to do a brief introduction about Data Umbrella, then Cutler will do his presentation. And if you have any questions, ask in the chat and we will get them answered at the end of the presentation. This is being recorded. Data Umbrella, if you're unfamiliar, we are a community for underrepresented persons in data science, and we are a nonprofit organization. This is the team that makes it all happen behind the scenes. My name is Reshma Sheikh. Beryl is out of Kenya. Christina is out of New York, and Sangam is out of India. We have a code of conduct, and we thank you for helping to make this a welcoming, friendly, professional community for all. There are various ways to support us. The first and foremost is to make it a welcoming community, and we'd love it if you'd share our events with other people. And we have some Data Umbrella open source projects that are open for contributors as well. And you can find them on our website under Get Involved, such as our blog and our events board. You can make a donation to our open collective. We have a YouTube channel, and this video will be placed on our YouTube channel. Check it out. We have been doing these for 4 years now, and we have a very extensive library of topics that are focused on Python, RStats, open source, career development. One of our playlists is career advice. We have data visualizations, and this will go under that playlist. We have data science for beginners, contributing to open source libraries, scikit-learn, PyMC, and NumPy as examples. Sign up for our monthly newsletter. We're at dataumbrella.substack.com, and we aim to get a newsletter out the first of the month. These are the social media platforms that we are on. Meetup is the place to find out about upcoming events. YouTube is a place to find recordings. Newsletter has news, and our projects are on GitHub at Data Umbrella. This platform it's called Big Marker. It has live captioning. So at the very top right, if you see a CC for closed captioning, click on it if you'd like transcripts at the bottom. We also have an online suggestion box. So if you have suggestions for future events or speakers, let us know. If you have feedback on this event, let us know. If you're experiencing any technical issues, we would like to know those too. And if you have any other feedback, and if you would like to speak at a Data Umbrella event, let us know. We have not posted our August events, but we will be posting them soon on Meetup. And today's talk is Visualizing Energy Transitions. Our speaker is Cutler Cleveland. He is an associate director at the Boston University Institute for Global Sustainability and a professor in the Department of Earth and Environment. He is the founder and co-leader of Visualizing Energy, an open access interdisciplinary science communication project. He recently served as principal investigator for Carbon Free Boston, and he is the author and editor of a number of reference books. You can find Cutler on LinkedIn and X. And with that, I am handing over the camera, the screen share, the video over to Cutler.
So much power. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. Very nice to join this community. The work that you do, connecting people from everywhere and all walks to the power of data visualization and data science more generally is very inspiring to us at Visualizing Energy. So I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to start out with a slide deck, which I'm going to use to just provide some overview about the project, and then I'd like to move to actually looking at the website and some online content, and talk about how we create the content, the process, and the people involved, and some feedback on where we are a little more than a year out from a public launch. So just a small bit of background here about the topic, why energy. And the motivation here is that we are in the early stages of what is legitimately called a seismic energy transition. And we know from the lessons of history that these transitions coincide with major shifts in human well-being and the health of the Earth's natural systems. Individuals, governments, companies from the local to global scale are calling for a carbon neutral energy system. But there is deep disagreement, uncertainty, bias, and ignorance about our choices and their consequences. This is true not only for technical issues, but also for important questions related to equity, such as who bears the costs and benefits and who participates in the decision-making process. Visualizing Energy aims to address this challenge. In a sentence, it is an open access science communication project that aims to increase actionable knowledge about sustainable and just energy transition. The why behind what we're doing is pretty simple, but to us very compelling. The first is that we are awash in information about energy and climate change, but really deficient in a shared understanding of what to do. Information, including data, is siloed by technology, policy, and disciplines. Reliable data are often inaccessible because it is buried in PDFs or behind paywalls, and the technical detail of energy data often makes it difficult to digest. And as is the case for many pressing issues of our time, deliberate fake news and disinformation spread false or discredited information. So how do we work towards this vision and mission? We rely largely on extant data that we extract from a wide range of sources. We use Python to organize, clean, and analyze the data, and Flourish to create visualizations that you see at the website. We use Monday, a project management software, to communicate, manage workflow, organize work streams into a data story, and coordinate social media. I write most of the stories with help from student researchers. Our audience engagement emphasizes our weekly and monthly newsletters, posting on LinkedIn and X, and periodic targeted email campaigns. A quick history behind the project. We started out...
Cutler, if I may interrupt for a moment.
Sure.
It seems like something is being moved and the microphone is being impacted by it. If you're moving something next to it, just to let you know.
Oh, thank you.
Every now.
Sorry about that. It might have been a piece of paper actually that I moved.
All right, good.
How is the sound okay now?
This is much better, yes.
Okay, thanks for that. So back in 2021, I organized an independent study course with 6 students from the Department of Earth and Environment, which is in the College of Arts and Sciences at Boston University, where I'm based. Some students from Computing and Data Sciences, and a student from the College of Communication. And we got together and experimented with different software packages and produced some visualizations with the idea of thinking about, well, what would work in terms of communicating in a simple way with visualizations. Fast forward a year, and that the project was formalized at the Institute for Global Sustainability at BU. We hired a PhD data scientist who did a lot of the technical work. We adopted this model of using Python and Monday and Flourish to produce the content, and we started to design a website, and we officially did a soft launch in January of 2023. So who are the current people behind the project? What you see here people you see here are students, both from the bachelor's to master's to the PhD level, who have backgrounds in data science, environmental science and climate change, audience engagement, and other topics related to energy and sustainability. And they do a lot of the work of gathering and analyzing the data, producing the visualizations, writing some stories in some cases, and a lot of our audience engagement work. Okay, so I'm going to exit out of here and hopefully successfully change my screen to go to the web, where we're actually going to now look at some content at the site. So here we are at visualizingenergy.org. And as you can see, we chose 4 initial areas to focus on that align with our initially limited resources to produce content and to provide some differentiation from existing data-based information sources about energy. We have a weekly story that we push out as a featured data story. And as you scroll down, you can learn more about the project, how to become involved, and then we show all the recent stories that are published at the website. Users can learn more about the project that way. So in terms of discovery of content, there are a number of ways or pathways that users can find information. Every story is tagged with 1 or more granular topic areas. So let's look at, as an example, some content associated with oil. And you can see here all the returns of stories that are tagged with oil as you scroll down here. And you can see that we have an international focus, but also with a particular emphasis on the United States, for which we have a lot of initial expertise, and which is a very data-rich country in terms of energy and climate data. So let's dive into a particular story. So this is the sort of unit of consumption at our website. So this is a story on the history of oil production in the United States. And as you scroll through a story, you can see that the visualizations are accompanied by a narrative that includes links to sources and other related content. I'll use this choropleth map, which shows cumulative oil production since the beginning of the industry back in 1859, to illustrate some important features. Each visualization has 3 options for the user located here beneath the visualization. If you click on the PNG, users can quickly download a high-resolution PNG file for their use. If I click on the embed code here, you get an HTML string, which you can put in any website, and that will publish the Flores visualization exactly as it's seen on the website. And if you click the data file here, it's not going to show on the screen, but it downloads a CSV file, which has all the data used to generate the visualization in a clean format and all the metadata associated with where the data is from and how we transformed it. And all this content is freely available through a Creative Commons license for people to use. If we look at a line chart here, you'll see that the teaching, learning, and storytelling is enhanced by user interaction with many of our visualizations. For example, this shows the rate of oil production for different regions and countries. And I can go up here and pick individual states that I'm interested in. Alaska is an interesting story because of its quick rise in production when the Alaska pipeline was finished and its decline due to the lack of new discoveries. I can pick California, which has a long history since the beginning of the industry for being a major oil producer. Down here we have a bar chart race, and this illustrates how a dynamic visualization with text annotations can produce a sort of mini self-contained story. Shows the early stages, the stages of the industry, starting in the eastern U.S., then California, then the mid-continent and Gulf Coast regions. And then later on to offshore Gulf of Mexico, and the recent history when hydraulic fracturing, or otherwise known as fracking, produced big changes in production. One other feature of our stories are links, internal links to content. You can see one here related to fracking, and another one here to a story about U.S. energy consumption. I'm going to click on that and go to that story because it shows some other features of some of our content. So I'm going to stop this line chart race. So this is a graph which shows the total amount of different forms of energy used in the country since the country actually first became a country back in the late 18th century. And what you're seeing is on the vertical axis, just the total amount of energy consumed in the country by different types of energy. So I'll go ahead and play this through the end. So you can see these big changes in sources.
We don't see the new page.
You don't see you're not seeing this web page with
right. We see the text where you show the share of total energy consumption. We don't actually see the new page yet.
Oh, so if this doesn't change, do I have to change my sharing every time I change a page? Let me see. I'm unfamiliar with this software, so please bear with me. I guess I do. Okay, lesson learned. Thanks for that feedback. Now, are you seeing a visualization with
yes
US? Okay. So back to the beginning. So this is a chart that shows as I mentioned before you actually got to see it, total energies in the United States by different sources. And the annotations inform the reader about big changes, these energy transitions that I mentioned that produce these big changes in society and the environment. Most recently, climate change associated with the greenhouse gas emissions with coal, oil, and natural gas. So lots of stories to tell in this series regarding rates of change, relative switch between energy sources, and so on. I can also go up here in the legend and change this to ranks. So now it shows over time the ranking of fuels based on the quantity used. So the top ranked fuel would be the one that is most used at a particular point in time. And so you can see highlight individual stories. So you can see the rise of oil, early 20th century, particularly after World War II. You can see coal's long run of dominance in the late 19th, early 20th century, and things like nuclear power, which arrived much later in the nation's energy history. So that gives you a sense of some of the types of interactions that can happen with our content. So let me go to another story, and I'm going to have to switch my sharing here. So let me do that. Switch screen. Now we should see a story about wind energy. Can someone confirm that?
Yes.
Great. So this is an animated map. And what we're looking at here, sorry for that, sliding around. This is from a data source called the Energy Monitor, which catalogs every power plant in the world and some of its history. And in this case, we're looking at wind power. And so this story shows the history of wind power. And so I'm just going to stop it here. And so each plant, let me make this a little bigger if I can. So each new power plant, wind farm in this case, when it's connected to the grid, lights up as a red dot for a couple of seconds and then disappears. If you hover over a dot, you can find information about this particular plant. So this is an early project in Southern California, Southern California, and it shows its status and its capacity in terms of generating electricity and so on. So I'm just going to run this story, and you'll see the kind of the broad trends. You see this big push in Northern Europe in the early 2000s, also in the US, and then a big move, especially most recently in China and India, as wind energy spreads around the world as a means to fight climate change. And the blue dots here are plants that are currently under construction at the time of the visualization. Let me show you one other example of content types. Let me locate this. So this is a story about the world's hydropower facilities, an important source of electricity around the world, and it's especially important in certain countries such as China, the United States, and Brazil. And this uses a survey tool to create a visualization. And here, every power plant in the world that was either operating or planned or under construction is represented by a circle. And if I hover over a circle here, I can get information about that project, where it's located, what stage it's in, what type of technology, and its capacity, and so on. Now, this is a slideshow that would play on its own, but when I hit play, but I'm going to stop and just click through these so I can talk a little bit more about some of the aspects of the visualization. So here I've now colored the projects by the type of technology. So there are different forms of hydropower plants, pump storage. The green dots are what's called conventional storage, which is what most people think of, a big dam with a reservoir behind it, but other technologies as well. I can sort these regionally. So you can see a lot of action happening in Asia. And if you dive into it, you can see in particular that most of that is in China. And then I can also sort them into stages. So there's ones currently operating, and then ones that are either announced or in pre-construction or construction. And one of the things that jumps out there is, for example, if you look at pre-construction and construction, almost all the action is in Asia and not in Europe or certainly North America. South America does have some action there. A couple of things to note about this: if I wanted to, this little wheel on the bottom right, I could click on that, and that actually allows the user to change how the data are visualized. So, for example, I could, instead of shading by region, I could shade by technology type. Well, that doesn't make sense since it's already showing technology type, but I can also group them differently by region, for example, and technology type. So the user can also kind of explore information the way he or she wants. One thing to note in terms of user resources for animations, the download here is not a PNG, but it's an actual GIF. So if you download this, you would be able to use this as you would normally use any other GIF. So I'll just say one or two more things while we're on the website. If you go to the About page, you can read more about our sort of organizing principles and the way in which we work, how we do it, our commitment to transparency, open access, and other aspects of how we operate. And you can also sign up for our weekly and monthly newsletters if you're interested in learning in getting this content on a regular basis. So I will stop there with the website, and I will just briefly go back to the slide deck to show you some information related to the uptake of our content. So let's see here. So you've seen the slide deck?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So in terms of viewership, we're on a pretty quick upward trend. We're up to about 8,000 unique viewers per month. We got a little over 100 data stories. And our current capacity, as I mentioned, we push out one story per week. And some of our most popular content are in the areas that you show there, as also people browsing our the archives of our newsletter. Here's a visualization of where our users have come from. So these are the number of unique visitors over the past calendar year. And in part due to the orientation of the content, but also due to where our initial contacts were when we launched the site, we have a heavy uptake in the United States and also Western Europe, but now we're also spreading to other countries where, albeit at low levels, we're now seeing an international interest in our content. Social media, we've done a pretty good job on social media. There's more we can do, but a lot of this has been done by students working part-time. So the return on investment has actually been quite large. Our newsletters are particularly satisfying. We have a 50% open rate, which is about twice the average in the business world, and we have a very low unsubscribe rate. So we're happy with those results thus far. Our audience initially, based on the data that we've collected and feedback that we've gotten, is in higher education, in the areas that you see there. We've also been picked up in major open access educational repositories. So these are peer-reviewed content repositories for teachers and professors to find slide decks, images, data stories, and so on. And over the past 4 to 6 months, we see a trend towards a diversification of the consumption of our content to the people and organizations that you see there. These are the open educational resources that I mentioned that are peer-reviewed by teachers and university faculty, which organize content in particular ways for teachers to use. And lastly, I'll just show you some of the unsolicited feedback that we've gotten from around the world by people, mostly in universities, but also in the media and think tanks and government agencies who are using our content. And this use is corroborated by looking at the analytics for where our content is being downloaded and used. And we can see it in classrooms and in syllabi and other modes of end use. So I will stop there and see if I can successfully stop sharing my screen and turn it over to hopefully some Q&A. Love to hear people's thoughts and feedback.
Cutler, thank you. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please ask in the chat or the Q&A. In the meantime, I do have a couple of questions, which is, do you collaborate with policymakers? Have you, I assume that is your long-term goal, or maybe not?
We'd love to influence policymakers. And I think that is an aspirational goal in the United States, and I think in most other countries. To influence policymakers, you have to produce content in a very particular way that is very issue oriented and written in a way that can directly inform policy decisions. And so I think that some of our research we know is being used, for example, by people who do research for congresspeople and senators. We've seen some evidence of that. We are used a lot here in Massachusetts by people in state government that we have connections with. But I would say that right now, the content that we produce is more informational background information rather than something directly informing policy. We would like to have, in the future, build capacity to produce content using this type of approach, but in a different modality or product that would target policymakers.
Okay. There's a question here from Liz. How do you recruit student contributors? Is there a class or is it all employment?
Good question. So the initial class of students who helped kind of do all the initial brainstorming and work was an actual class, although pretty informal. It wasn't actually a structured, regularly offered class on data visualization or scientific communication or like that. So our recruitment of students is simply based on word of mouth. We have a large, I'm in a Department of Earth and Environment, which is in the College of Arts and Sciences. It has a lot of students who have subject matter expertise and also good quantitative skills. We also have an entire faculty of computing and data sciences. And also, as I mentioned, a College of Communication, where people have interest and expertise in media and audience engagement. So when we are looking to hire someone to do the data work or community audience engagement, we simply send out a short job description by email to all of our networks on campus, and we are then inundated with students who want to work. And we, in almost all cases, pay students to work on an hourly basis to do particular tasks. I would love to offer a class associated with this when I get the time to design and conceive of such a class. I will certainly do it. And I know there are other classes taught around in various disciplines that do this type of that teach this type of skill, and I would love to learn from those.
So there's another question. There's two related questions. The first is, for me, I'm personally accustomed to working on open source projects where there's code and something on GitHub and people contribute that way. Is this project set up in a way that anybody in the community could contribute?
Currently, well, when you say contribute what specifically?
Well, that's a good question. Maybe I guess that's a good question. So I guess if people want to be involved in being a part of this project, how would they go about doing it?
So that's so in principle, that is something that we've done that a little bit in the sense that we have been, approached by people from a couple NGOs, a research institute, other universities who are interested in collaborating, and in particular often have expertise in a particular area and have know of data in that particular area, say, energy justice in India, for example. And in that case, we will work with an individual who may actually help acquire the data and actually do some of the data cleaning and analysis. We haven't gotten to the point, this is largely a bandwidth problem, because to produce information and data that is trustworthy and that is accurate, you have to do some serious quality control. And we simply have a bandwidth challenge of engaging in someone new who comes to us with information and bringing that person on board. They have to learn. I didn't even talk about the Monday platform by which we manage workflow. They have to learn how to use Monday and engage in the workflow. They would have to learn how to use Flourish and learn how we all fit together to produce a single story, which is certainly doable. It's not terribly complicated, but we don't have the bandwidth right now to be able to onboard people in that manner. But if we were approached by someone who had a lot of these existing skills, then we would be able to, accommodate them in helping to, expand the topic areas we cover or our ability to produce content.
Thank you. There's a question here from William, which is, thanks a lot for your great presentation. I have a question about the presentation between the extreme events and the energy transmissions. Do you have any figure or plots to show this relationship? Thanks. We're expecting the cross-border transmissions could mitigate the impact of extreme events.
Interesting question. By energy transmission, I don't know if, Willie, maybe you can answer this in the chat in real time. Are you referring to electricity in particular? Certainly, the transmission of electricity in the United States, we're seeing it right now with the heat waves and the challenge of the current grid being able to meet the demand associated with heat waves or floods, fires, and so on, all of which are becoming more common in a warmer world. And this challenge is exacerbated now by integrating renewables and wind, intermittent sources of energy, into a grid that wasn't designed to hold them. So there are lots of challenges associated with it. We do have a few visualizations related to that. You can, if you drop me an email at the site or on LinkedIn or somewhere, I'd be happy to point you to those. It's an important topic.
Next question is from Leo. Can I become involved in the program, and if so, how?
Well, Leo, shoot me an email with your resume, transcript, CV, whoever you are, what you do, and I can certainly look at your credentials and to see if the fit is there. We're always looking for good new energetic talent, subject to the bandwidth constraint that I mentioned before.
Next question is, how is it funded? Liz.
Well, this is where I spend a lot of my current time. So initially, the project, the early stages was simply done on my time and the students working on the project. And then we officially got sort of supported by the Institute for Global Sustainability. And they supplied, most importantly, funding for a PhD data scientist. Her name is Heather Clifford, who is really helped, in any very real sense, was a sort of co-founder of the project. She did a lot of the technical work behind the project, setting up the project management, doing all of the website work. She has since left the project and is working in the private sector now. So she is responsible for a lot of what you see there. And so she was paid through the Institute for Global Sustainability. We also had some other support from the Department of Earth and Environment and the College of Communication to support students. But right now we're in our transition phase, so that's initial funding by the Institute was time limited. And we're now working on trying to raise money through foundations or companies or individuals who are interested in supporting this type of work. And so right now I would say that bandwidth constraint is really caused by the budget constraint, and we're working to alleviate that, let's just say.
Thank you. Next question from Doris. Great presentation. Congratulations. Does your work extend all over the world, especially to Africa?
Yes, it does. As I think mentioned at some point in the presentation, we definitely have a global reach, and there's some content specifically related to Africa, not a lot. And we certainly want to expand that, in part because we have equity and access to affordable clean energy is a central theme of our work. And Africa faces, not particularly sub-Saharan Africa, faces some real challenges there. And so if you go to the site and under Explore Topics, look for tags related to regions or Africa, and you'll see some information we have there. So here, following up on that, so there's a great, to connect this to one of the previous questions, an opportunity for collaboration. Are people or organizations who are aware of and have access to data related to important energy and climate and justice issues in Africa, we would be certainly open to a potential proposed collaboration with those people or organizations.
So the next question is, do you face challenges in obtaining data from other countries? How do you find the availability of data in the U.S. versus other countries, depending on the laws of providing data by the government or corporation?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the big challenges and constraints that we find. Where are interesting data? Who publishes them? How can we judge their veracity? How easily accessible are they? And are they free to use and free to republish? We only use data that we can embed in our visualizations and that people can download and use, because I think that is essential to demonstrate the transparency and neutrality and quality that we promise. So there are some, in terms of country level data, there's only a handful of sources that provide comprehensive data on a large number of countries. So the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the Statistical Review of World Energy, the International Energy Agency, which is an OECD organization out of Paris, the World Bank, and a few other places. So you can get a lot of information from those sources, and we do use some of those sources. Then there are a variety of NGOs like the World Energy Monitor that publish different sources. And then there are a lot of other sources where you really kind of have to dig and do some research. So information is kind of sitting there, but isn't widely used or known for a variety of reasons. So a lot of our students have become very good at excavating that information. So where we could really, in the long run, use help are people and organizations with country or region level knowledge. Like, for example, I have about the U.S. So I've been studying the U.S. energy system for decades, and I have a good sense of where to look. I kind of know what I don't know. So I'm pretty good at that. And we could use someone like that for, every country in the world in principle. And so there's an area where we could really use some help from outside sources. I should also say we have also collaborated with academic researchers who have published work in peer-reviewed journals, which use really interesting and oftentimes novel original data sets. And we will we will approach an author and say, hey, we loved your story. Can you share the data with us? And we will take that data, make some simple visualizations, and write our own sort of story or synopsis of the research. And there's a number of stories in our current repository that use that. So that's really, that's really the essence of a lot of important science communication, getting that sort of cutting edge research that is, hard to access for the average person, and getting it out there on a platform like this. But that requires a lot of work, because you have the transaction cost of dealing with authors is large in terms of communicating. They dump the data on you. You pull it down from GitHub, but sometimes it has a data dictionary, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's not very good. So there's back and forth. And so it's a lot of work to actually do that. It's worth the effort, but again, bandwidth constraints limit the extent to which we can do that.
Okay. Then the last question that I have, unless anybody else has any other questions, last call for questions, is what type of requests do you receive in terms of what type of information are organizations or people interested in seeing?
I think many of the requests we get, well, let me back up and say, a lot of the data sources out there in the world that are publicly available are organized in silos related to energy source or technology. So wind energy, solar energy, crude oil, electricity, and so on. But there are a lot of really important cross-cutting issues that apply to every type of energy: equity, justice, cost, financing, environmental impact, social awareness and opposition, cultural attitudes, and so on. And so what we have tried to do is organize a lot of our content around those cross-cutting areas. So as a result, a lot of the requests, the interest that we get are people who are interested, for example, in energy justice and energy access, and also in well-being. How does energy connect to per capita income? How does it relate to levels of literacy that we review, see in the differences we see in the world? How does it relate to different health outcomes around the world? And so we have a lot of interest in those areas of energy justice and well-being.
Okay. And the last question from Milburn is, have you looked at PyPUMS data from the University of Minnesota?
I'm not sure I know what that is. Is that census data?
Yes, I'm looking at the website, provides census and survey data from around the world.
Oh, I'd have to look at that data. I'm kind of quickly looking at it right now. Oh, yeah, so this is like micro census data, right? I think. And we actually, so the short answer is I'm not sure. I have to look at it some more. I know there is one story in Visualizing Energy. If you look for the story on oil booms in the U.S. And who benefited in terms of job gains based on race, ethnicity, and income, and it shows how different populations benefited from the big drilling boom associated with fracking. And they used, I believe, the IPUM data in that. But so this is a good, I appreciate the question. We need to look at this data more carefully. Thanks for that suggestion.
Any last words, Cutler?
No, don't have any great words of wisdom. I just, again, appreciate, these are great questions. You obviously have a great community. So a shout out to you for the important enhancements to social capital that you're doing with your organization.
That's wonderful. Thank you for reaching out to Data Umbrella and sharing this. And we're happy that we could arrange the talk for the community.
Okay, thank you again.